Hello, everybody.
Hiya.
Heather.
Hi, you all right?
Hello, Mike. Hello,
Yes,
Tom.
are you?
Hello, Tony.
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
So, whilst we wait for some of the latecomers, I just thought it'd be useful to have a bit of a news update for DigiLegal and for Capacity Vault as a whole, and then I'll hand over to Marie at about 3 minutes past when we can kind of get on with the session proper. For those of you who've not met me, my name's Oliver. I'm a founder at DigiLegal and also the head of legal, solicitor and trust and estate practitioner. Big news is focused around Capacity Vault. We're really happy to have been recognised at the Wilmington PLC Awards last month and also at the Modern Law Awards this month for our use of technology in protecting people's wishes when they're making wills. And also, Capacity Vault has been spun out of the DigiLegal group of companies, so it can now individually help charities and other companies in the end-of-life planning, estate planning, and other sectors to just reduce the amount of contested wills that exist out there. If anybody's got any questions about that or what changes that would mean for your charities, who obviously all get free use of Capacity Vault through the Make a Will Online platform, please get in touch. The headline is it should make absolutely no noticeable difference to you whatsoever. All of your supporters who make a will through Make a Will Online can use Capacity Vault to protect their wills, store evidence of their testamentary capacity absolutely free. It's a couple of minutes past, Marie, and I've got nothing else, no other news, so I'm going to hand back over to you.
The next station is Swinash.
Marie, I think you're still on mute.
Fortunately, Georgia Lewis from Cornwall Hospice Care, she put the actual question forward about someone has pledged, what next? But unfortunately, she can't make it. So she's really glad that we're recording it. So she's basically said that they've been working really hard to up their game through various channels on giving supporters, the opportunity to write a will and leave a gift. And now they are in the process of deciding exactly how they can best steward their supporters after they've pledged. So she was obviously wanting to find out what other people do in other causes. So that's our topic of discussion. So I know I've heard from a few of you that definitely want to let us know some information. I know Mike and Cheryl. So is there anybody else who definitely wants to actually have a slot of sharing? So I can just put you in an order, sort of a running order, so we can sort of make the most use of time.
This is Swinash. This train is already. The next station is Swinash Triangle.
I can hear something. I think it might be coming through the Tony or Cheryl's audio. Might be Tony's.
It definitely was not coming through mine because I was on mute. So I don't know.
Oh no! Apologies for naming and shaming you. I think the mute button was off my screen. There.
Is Mike? Mike, are you here? Is he here, Mike? I saw him.
I'm here. I'm just hiding.
Okay, so basically, if you go first, then Mike, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
And then Cheryl, are you happy to go after Mike? And then we'll see how it all unfolds. Hopefully, we'll obviously we don't know how long the discussion is going to take, but we'll aim no later than sort of 11:40 to go into smaller groups. But depending on how many are here, we can sort that out later on. Does that sound okay? Lovely. So if I stop, do you want me to stop sharing my screen or?
That's how big people want my face on their screen, doesn't it? I suggest not.
Well, I'm going to be taking some notes anyway. But do you want me to stop? Shall I stop sharing? I'll stop sharing. Make it a bit bigger. Yeah. Okay. I'll put myself on mute.
Okay. So I'll be as brief as possible. I'll just basically, I inherited everything that we do. It's something I need to look into. In fact, I'm going to do so soon. So this is good timing for me. But in summary, we do 3 things. When we get a pledge, we send a letter of thanks. We hold a yearly event, and we reassure through our marketing channels going forward. I'll just break those down into what that actually means. So the letter does a few things. It obviously thanks people for their gift. We put a couple of examples of legacy funded projects in there so they can see the kind of thing we do with their gifts. And then we actively say that we won't bother them again to try and reassure that they're not signing up to a lot of marketing and such that they may not want, but with one exception. And that exception is the invite to the event once a year. So this is a sort of behind the scenes, private and unpublicized event for important supporters. So it could be a life member, a legacy pledger, a major donor, etc. We sort of lump them all together, and they get a talk from the CEO, a talk about projects, a guided walk in an area that you might not be able to normally access. Just for everyone else, I work for the Wildlife Trust, so that could be, you know, a part of a reserve that's not open to the public yet, that sort of thing. The point is, and we give them tea and cake, of course. That's primary and gut rule. And the idea is to make them feel valued and part of the organisation, which of course they are. So it acts a bit of a social event as well, because they all know each other. And I think it's important that we have that yearly connection with them, because they'll chat to me possibly about their legacy again. And it just makes them feel part of the whole team, I think. And then, yeah, the last bit is how we then don't neglect our current pledges when we plan our marketing strategy. What I mean by that is we have a website that's got a webpage with a map of examples of how legacy funds fund our projects. Of course, this goes into social media and magazine articles and so on as well. And so while we don't target people who've already pledged directly, I think our social media presence, our newsletters are inclusive to them, because they see how money's been spent, and it perhaps gives them a bit of a warm glow that they're helping this, perhaps reminds them why they left us a gift in the first place, maybe even prompt to update their will and leave an even a more generous gift. So although I don't target them in that way, I think they're sort of influenced by the marketing we do after the fact. That's pretty much it. So in summary, we send a letter of thanks, we hold a yearly event, and we don't forget about them when we're doing our marketing. That's it.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Mike, for sharing that. Has anybody got any questions directly they want to ask Mike? Oliver?
Yeah, I do, and it's a question for Mike, but also the room. I'm a lawyer, not a marketer, so I'll make all the mistakes that there would be possible to make if I was in your position. I have heard people, mainly other lawyers, in fact, say there's a school of thought that once somebody's pledged, just absolutely don't contact them. You don't want to upset the apple cart. You don't want to irritate people with constant communication. There's also a story, an anecdote that does the rounds, which you might have heard, about someone who says pledged to 10 charities in their will and said, never contact me again, or I'll take you out of my will. And then when he eventually died, there was 1 or 2 pledges in his will. Urban myth, do you think it's worth losing a couple of pledges by continuing with that ongoing conversation, or is it worth your time as a legacy as a legacy fundraiser to actually micromanage your database to such an extent that you can pop people out and put people back in? Is that even possible with a smaller charity?
That's many questions, Oliver. So I think, yeah, let's just go backwards so I can remember what you said. So micromanaging the database, that's an interesting one, because we are literally moving from data. So by the end of this year, we will have a whole new shiny database that can do many more interesting things. So ask me again in 6 months' time is the short answer to that one. Because yes, I would like to be able to pigeonhole people into minute little categories, and depending on what they do. We do give, when we send our letter of thanks, we do say even about the invite for the event, if that's okay, if not, let us know, so people can immediately take themselves. So if someone did say never speak to me again, we would never speak to them again. I think the whole, for me, it's always been the whole strategy of legacy marketing is never pester, because I've just made myself available to our members as often as possible and in a wide range of ways as possible. And normally they do come to me with questions, with a desire to write a free will, with a desire just to tell me they've left as a gift, whatever it is. They always come to me, and I don't like to do any sales of any kind. So I think it's always better to be a little hands off and don't push it. And I would rather, I'm not aware that we've ever lost a gift by not stewarding them through the pipeline a little bit more keenly, shall we say. Does that make sense? Does that answer most of your questions? Good.
It does. So it is worth the time to pull people out of the database, or select communications, and having that available when they need you, not being up in their face is hear the message loud and clear.
Yeah, and I think it's also, as a smaller charity, I think it's quite easy for us to do, because everyone who pledges, we tend to know who they are personally, or more or less, or I've had some conversation with them and I remember their name and so on. If I have hundreds and thousands to deal with, I would forget all that information, and it's easy for people to slip through the net. But even now, we've got our event a week on Friday, and then I've got a list of people. I know who they are, I know what they've pledged. Some of it's in my brain, so I don't forget when I meet them, and it's kind of easier to manage, I think, being small. If I worked for, one of the massive charities, then yeah, maybe I'd have a different attitude.
Any more questions directly for Mike? No? Okay, Cheryl, do you want to discuss?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks, Mike. That's very interesting. I think, again, also we are a small charity, and we've only been doing a proactive legacy marketing for 2.5 years. So again, have a very small number of pledges. So exactly, it's very easy to manage them. When people, I think, because obviously, again, as Mike said, it's really important that you don't hassle people. But so when people fill out their pledge form, then they tick whether they want further communication or not. So obviously, absolutely, if someone has pledged and said they don't want any further communication, then that goes without saying that you wouldn't do that. But then if they are happy for that, then again, it's obviously, apart from the thank you, again, it's the thank you that we do, talk about some of our latest medical research, talk about what legacies have funded in the past. And then we, because it's still a new program, we have an annual awards event, which is where we award prize in an area of research. So it's not a legacy event, but that's the only thing we can invite them to. But we are looking in years to, in the next year or so, to maybe decide to try and do something that's more for legacy pledges. We've sort of done one which is a lab visit where we just had a couple of people, but you can't, it's not an event where you can have a lot of people there. You could only really have sort of 2 groups of people, because it wouldn't work well. We've did that, we've done that, and we have done that sort of already for our supporters, and it worked well, so we could adapt that to try to do that to legacy pledges. And I think, again, if people have, it's better, again, because they're so small, I've had communication with a lot of the pledges. Some of them will say, keep me updated. And if they do that, then it is a case of just an annual update, just to tell them what we've done to keep them in mind. And it's interesting, to your point, Oliver, I mean, I've heard that bizarre rumor about people say, don't ever contact me again. And obviously people have said that don't. But then there's the other view that if people change their, there's a lot of stuff on the forums at the moment about people making so many wills throughout their life, and it's only that final will that actually makes a difference. And there's the other view that if they've made a pledge and they haven't heard anything from you, they might think you don't care. So I think, I don't know if there's anyone's got any evidence of that, So it's that sort of making them feel that, as Mike said, that they're part of your community. They are a pledger. They're very important to you, without obviously feeling that you're overburdening them with communication, but also not thinking that you've completely forgotten about them. So I think it's a challenging sort of thing to think about.
Thanks, Cheryl. I think one of the key things is listening to your donors, isn't it? So you've got to really listen to what they need. So anyway, I've marked that, got a big circle around that, listen to your donors. It's a key highlight. So has anybody got any direct questions for Cheryl? No? Okay, so Tom, Oliver.
I think it can end. I think it can last to the end. I know that we've got one more person to speak, and I think it's going to be to all the people who've got a process and a question to everybody really. So I'll wait.
Okay. So Tom from Cornwall Wildlife Trust would like to.
Hi everyone. Like Mike, I'm also from a wildlife trust, but we're way down in Cornwall. And I'll just tell you a few things that we do. Some of which directly address Oliver's question, I think. I took over Legacies about a year ago, and there wasn't really much of a program before I took it on. So we didn't really, I don't think, other than sending the letter, which we still do, I don't think we did a huge amount more than that. The two key things I've brought in are events. So we ran an event at one of our nature reserves last year, a sort of walk and talk. And I think the feedback I had, this is where it's relevant to Oliver's question, from those pledges was, oh, it's so lovely to be invited to something. One of them turned up and said, oh, I don't know why I was invited to this. And I said, oh, it's because you've agreed to leave us a gift in your will. And it was like, oh, right, brilliant. Thanks very much. That's great. So lots of them were just really pleased to be invited and be made to be feel special. Then I decided that we had some spare calendars. Cornwall Wildlife Trust produces a calendar each year. We had some spares. So I've sent them to every legacy pledger. And this year I'm doing the same again. And I'm then sending the calendar with the invite to the next event. So they'll get the calendar in a few weeks' time and an invite to another event at a nature reserve. And my first bit of feedback from the calendars was, again, really lovely. Lots of people wrote in saying, thanks so much, we really appreciated that. Some even made a donation to say, thank you very much for sending us a calendar. So that's really good. The other thing I'm exploring doing is sending Christmas cards. But at the moment, we've got about 150 pledges on our CRM. So I need to assess how, the cost of that and the staff time involved in doing that. But they're the main things we do. One other thing I might mention is we run an annual thankathon as a marketing and fundraising team, which we get lots of our staff involved with. And in that, we always try to highlight a pledger story. So we go and interview a pledger and talk to them about why they pledge, which I think both does the sort of stewardship thanking piece for pledgers, but also highlights gifts in wills in general. So I'll just put the link to that blog in the chat. So if people want to read it, they can. I think that's pretty much us.
Brilliant, Tom. Thanks for sharing that. That's the calendar. I love that idea because everybody needs a calendar. So useful. Yeah, it's brilliant. So has anybody got any questions directly for Tom?
So Tom, when you mentioned about the calendar, we don't have calendars at the moment, but again, we have we started last year a competition for scientists where they designed a Christmas card, and we got one from, a great one from last year. And I was suddenly thinking, I could send out Christmas cards. The problem is, can you offend, people? So were you thinking of actually sending them a batch of Christmas cards for them to send to their contacts, or just a Christmas card to say happy Christmas?
No, just a Christmas card to say thank you in the way that we would for major donors or sort of high value givers. Just a Christmas card which says, thank you for your continued support of Cornwall Wildlife Trust. Have a great Christmas, kind of thing.
Yeah, which I think that's fine, and as because ours don't have anything religious on them anyway. But What do people think about sending them a pleasure, say half a dozen cards as a thank you to say that they could share, that they could send to people they know?
I think that's a good idea. I do think it's a good idea. I think people would appreciate that. And then that also is a bit of a twofold thing, isn't it? Because it's it'll sort of explore their connection with the charity to their friends as well, and highlight the fact that they're supporting that cause, and then somebody might want to find out more about it, and it could lead to other things as well. Anybody else got any thoughts?
I think it sounds nice. Am I still on?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I think it sounds nice, provided they don't think we're getting them to do marketing for them. That it's like this is some nice cards you might like to enjoy sending, rather than please send these to 10 of your friends so that you spread the word about our cause.
I don't think everybody has an analytical mind like me. Mike, did you want to chip in?
No, I was just going to say, I think, likewise, we do send a Christmas card to our important people. I genuinely don't actually know where the threshold is with legacies with that, because I know we send a lot these days, and maybe that's just something we should be looking at. And maybe, calendar, I think it's a really good idea, a way of having that same sort of connection, but without having to write 300 Christmas cards or whatever it is. But also a box of cards as well, if they were the right cards and done in the right way. I mean, I guess giving someone a yearly free gift it's similar in some ways to the event, that it just makes that yearly connection to remind them that they're valued, essentially. And I think that's a really good move, and something I will look at. I've highlighted it on yellow on this on this note, you see, and that means I'm going to look at it, so that's a good thing. I also, just to add another thing, that a lot of this may be very dependent on what your charity is. So the difference between a homeless charity and a wildlife charity, Legacy Officer could produce very different responses into, is this a good idea, is this a bad idea? So for us, a lot of our pledgers are very actively involved in the charity anyway. They're volunteers and members and so on. Whereas I can imagine someone who perhaps wants to help the homeless may well leave, a large legacy, but I don't want to know about it. You just got it because it's something I care about. And that's perhaps a more difficult charity to engage people with with a yearly calendar or something. That's just my forethought, but I've been interested to see if people agree or disagree with that. But it's very much depends on what your charity is.
Yeah, I think your cause as well, it's key, isn't it? I think stewarding is going to be different per cause, really, isn't it? It's going to be really quite tailored to the cause of your charities, to how you go about doing it, and putting them on the right path. If you could have slightly different paths depending on, after you've listened to your donors, what they want as well, that would be something that would be a really sort of good sort of process to maybe try to put in place. But I think, because I've written down, it depends on your cause a lot of the time. Obviously, the thank you at the beginning is something that everybody's going to want to do, and they're going to want to do that in the way that is right for your cause. And it might be an email, it might be a handwritten note, it might be a card, and then from then on, it's sort of can be quite tailored to your cause and to what path, the information you get back from the donor, whether they want to keep up to date, or if they didn't want to keep up to date. One of the options might be, okay, you don't want to be kept up to date, but would you mind us sending you sort of like our annual newsletter, just to keep you abreast of what's happening with the charity? And that might be a sort of way of, the people that necessarily might think, oh, no, I don't want to have lots of marketing. But if you offered a yearly sort of update, they might think, oh yeah, I wouldn't mind having something, once a year come through, just to keep me up to date as to what's happening, things like that. Okay, so has anybody got any more questions? Oliver, you're on mute.
So first of all, Tom put his hand up first,
Oh,
so I'm
sorry.
going to defer to him. Then I do have a question. Yeah, come back to my.
So there's just one other thing I meant to say, which we do, which I think has been really helpful. Whenever we send an appeal letter out or a uplift letter or some other kind of communication like that, where we're sending a response form, we'll always include a legacy ask on that. You know, please tick this box if you'd like to find out more about gifts and wills, or, you know, I've already pledged to Cornwall Wildlife Trust. It's really important to us that we don't send pledges that we don't keep asking pledges the same thing again and again and again. So we work really hard to make sure that we pull pledges out of that, and instead of asking again, we say something along the lines of, you've already kindly indicated that you plan to leave a gift in your will to Cornwall Wildlife Trust. We're so grateful for your support in this special way, or something similar to that. So it's just being mindful when you ask people not to be re-asking pledges to give when they've already given. It's just, I should have mentioned it earlier, sorry.
Oh, thank you. That kind of comes back a little bit to the question I had for Mike earlier. And yeah, if you can control the database to that sort of level, that's brilliant. The question I had for the room, and commenting on something that Tom, you said, you have stories of pledges, and you go into the background of why people have chosen to give in that way. And I am a enormous advocate of any kind of peer stories, so that people see, oh, you know, this person, they're just like me, and they've left a gift in their will, so their values live on, and allowing people to explain in their own ways. That is fantastic. It creates amazing and powerful content. Question is, do you ask every pledger if they would be happy to be interviewed, or give a few lines or paragraphs about why they've chosen to give to you? Or do you get those stories in a reactive way when you have a conversation, people just give them to you?
I'm happy to go first on that. No, I definitely don't ask everyone. That's the bit which Mike said, it's about relationships, so getting to know those people, and that's part of the beauty of holding those events, because then you meet people at the events, get to know them, and there are some who are quite enthused, and then if you then pick up the phone to them or drop them an email and say, oh, actually, I really was interested for you to say more, would you mind being part of this? Then they're more likely to say yes to that. One thought from me is that if you don't have any stories at all and you're trying to go from nowhere, if any of your trustees have got left a gift in the will, they're a really good sort of, or former trustees, I'd say they're the best people to start with, because they're quite happy. I've got a couple of former trustees who are also pledges, and they've been really good at being ambassadors for legacy giving.
And if the trustees haven't left a gift in their will, why not?
Why not?
So Tamsin has wrote on, so Tam's having a bit of trouble with her microphone and camera, but she's said that they've also updated a lot of their non-legacy related journals to give people more opportunities to ask about gifts in wills, and to let them know that they've pledged or tried to, you know, so they're trying to build up a database a bit more, so they can sort of control their sort of communications in that way. Okay, so has anybody got any more questions or anything they want to add? Mike?
Me again. I just wanted to agree with what Tom said about getting stories in a reactive way, because I think just about every story I've ever had has been exactly that you, for whatever reason, get a rapport with someone, and then you can easily shift the conversation into ask, and then you get some fantastic stories. We do usually once a year I run a story in our magazine that's exactly that, and I do a big photograph of someone and they're giving the reasons behind it and so on, and it always gets some really great feedback, not only from a legacy point of view, but people genuinely find it an interesting read, and who knows how many seeds that sows when they read it. So I do think it's extremely important, and Tom's bang on.
11:45, speak to your news.
Okay, Tony agrees.
Right. Okay. So anybody got anything else that they want to add to the discussion? No. Okay. So Oliver, shall we start the recording now, and then we can split up into, we'll just do 2 rooms. Yeah. So if you stop the recording.
Yeah, hang on. I'm oh, there we go. Yeah, found it.